Good evening.
Hello.
Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7:30 p.m. on the evening of October 2nd, 2012, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street in Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business that may come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield Board of Education on Friday, September 28, 2012, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Town Library, the Town Clerk of Westfield, the Alternative Press, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of the meeting. Dana, can we do a roll call?
Rich Matessa,
Here.
David Finn, Ann Carey,
Here.
Jane Clancy,
Here.
Mark Friedman,
Here.
Roseanne Kerstead,
Here.
Ginny Lights,
Here.
Gretchen Olick,
Here.
Mitchell Slater.
Here. All right, with that, Ann, could you lead us off?
Please join me.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Want to try it?
All right. Before we begin the business portion of the meeting this evening, I'd like to ask Amy Side to please come to the podium. Amy is co-president of the Education Fund of Westfield. Amy and other volunteers from the Ed Fund are committed to enriching the educational experiences of our students. Since 1992, they have raised $330,000 and provided those funds and grants directly into our classrooms. Amy is here with us tonight with respect to a recent grant awarded to the Westfield High School. And I know Amy is excited to tell us all about it. Amy?
Thank you, Rich, for letting us come tonight and to share this special occasion. When we received the grant application for an iPad lab for Westfield High School's library to be used to study how to incorporate iPads and their apps into our classrooms and curricula, we knew it was a grant that would have a major impact in our schools. And when we thought about who's made a major impact in Westfield, we immediately thought of Darielle Walsh. Darielle was a founding member of the Ed Fund more than 20 years ago. She's continued to be involved with us to this day, offering perspective, guidance, advice, and does anything we need her to do at a moment's notice. With her help, we built an endowment and funded more than $300,000 in grants to educators in our public schools. Aside from working with us, Darielle is a former president of the Board of Ed, is current president of the Optimist Club, works with the Rotary, the YMCA, the United Fund, and just about every other civic organization in town. We dedicate this grant to you and would like to present you with this certificate of our appreciation of your vision, your boundless energy, your dedication, and the major impact you've had on the community of Westfield. Darielle. Oh, in the front.
With like a three-legged race.
Wait, one more.
Did you bring your photographer?
Thank you. I'd like to say a couple of words. First of all, it's wonderful to be back in this room. An unusual experience to sit on this side of the table. I'd like to thank Amy for those very gracious comments and the Board of Trustees of the Education Fund for this totally unexpected recognition. I had to ask Amy twice when she called me on the telephone what she was talking about. When the Education Fund was actually established in 1991, it was one of the first community-based nonprofit public school foundations in the state of New Jersey with an independent volunteer board of trustees separate from the Board of Education. The success of the Education Fund is due to the many volunteers who have served on the board and have worked hard to continue the Education Fund. Remarkably, with no paid administrative staff, no paid executive director, and no funding from the Board of Education, unlike most other public school foundations now in New Jersey. So it's remarkable of what this Education Fund has been able to achieve. Every dollar raised goes directly to the classroom, benefiting students with projects and programs, and all given through teacher-sponsored grants. And as has been said before, well over $300,000 has been returned to the public schools for use in the classroom. So while I'm honored with this recognition, and I accept the award and the title for the iPad lab, I want to take this opportunity to really thank, recognize, and acknowledge all of the volunteers that have worked for the past 2 decades, too many to list and mention, but all of them that devoted time and effort to ensure the continuation of the Education Fund. And I'm so proud of our accomplishments over these past 2 decades and really look forward to continuing to support the schools. So thank you very much.
And now I'd like to introduce 2 teachers from Westfield High School. Nancy Latimer is a library media specialist, and Jackie Spring, a humanities teacher. Each will talk about the iPad lab and its implementation at the high school. Thanks.
Hi. So I'm really excited to be here. You all know that I love technology, and when I went to the school library and I saw that the iPad cart had been delivered, I was like, wow, it's really here. It's really happening. So thank you so much to the members of the Education Fund. I can't even, I don't know how to express to you what a difference this has made, because what we have been able to do is to take the technology and to put it into the students' hands. So I went to the humanities class the first day, and our very talented teacher, who's here with us tonight, was introducing the iPads to the class, and I saw this look of just amazement come over the students' faces, like excitement. And she even took a little poll, and the kids were all doing it on the iPads, like, how do you feel about having the iPads in the classroom? And they were like, oh my God, I'm really excited about this, you know, OMG. So that's what was in the poll, OMG. So I would rather have the teacher speak to you directly. She's there with the kids every day. We're in touch on a very consistent basis, discussing what future possibilities we have, what she's doing now. But I can't thank the members of the Education Fund enough. Thank you so much for giving our kids this opportunity. So I'm going to introduce Jackie Spring. Jackie Spring teaches American Studies. She's an 11th grade teacher working with one of the classes that's using the iPads.
Nancy, for a second, could
Yes,
you just
sure.
take a moment to tell everybody your current role
Yes.
at the high school? Thank you.
See, I switched jobs. So this year I've stepped away from being a media specialist at the high school, which I've been doing for the last 9 years. And I'm taking on the role of master technology teacher for the grades 6 through 12. And then there is a counterpart to that role, K through 5. And what we're basically doing is helping the teachers to incorporate and integrate technology into their classrooms. This is a fantastic opportunity because I am now able to go into the classrooms with the teachers, co-teach, model, give them a little bit of moral support. Teachers can come and meet with me. I have a website set up. They can contact me for in-person help and so forth. So this is a huge part of being able to make things like the iPad cart successful in the school, because the teachers can use that little extra hand-holding or just having somebody to kind of have a conversation with about what are the possibilities. We have iPads, but what are the possibilities in your classroom? So that is what I'm doing this year. Jackie?
Thank you.
I get really excited about technology, so pardon me if I look down on my cheat sheet. I want to be as to the point as I can. So I would like to first publicly thank both Nancy Latimer for writing the grant and the Education Fund for granting it. This is such a great opportunity, and I personally and professionally thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with students with this type of technology in the classroom every day. Thank you also for having me tonight. This is a new experience for me. I do have, as a side note before we go any further, if you're interested in seeing the results of the poll from the first day of American Studies, I do have that in my photo roll, so you're welcome to check that out. I will tell you, every single student in the class either answered that I could get excited about iPads or, oh my gosh, I'm totally excited. So that's a great start for the year. I guess I'll speak first a little bit about what we're doing and then answer any questions if you have more direct questions, if that's appropriate in this forum. So we're lucky enough in this grant to have 20 dedicated iPads to our classrooms daily. They are utilized daily in our classrooms. Students know to go and get them at the beginning of class, take them out, log on to note-taking application that works for them. We have students taking notes on Evernote. We have students using Google Docs with a American Studies or Humanities buddy to share their notes with their buddy. We also have students who are emailing to themselves notes or just things that will help them reinforce what it is we're talking about daily in class. I think the beauty of that is that our students get to choose what method works best for them, and they don't necessarily need us as their teachers to say, you need to sit here and take notes in this one format. I think the kids really have responded positively to that. They feel a different investment, I think, having the dedicated set in the room. I don't want to misrepresent them, but it seems as though kids, our students in particular, have come to the terms that they're willing to invest their time and effort in trying it because they know it will be there daily, if that makes sense. Like Nancy Latimer said on the first day when we said, you're lucky enough and you are probably some of the only kids in this class who will have this, their faces lit up and they immediately were excited to be able to do whatever it was we were going to do with these things. They love playing around with it. They love seeing what it offers. Speaking to content, what we've really seen so far is that since they have access to search engines like Google, they can look up factual questions relatively quickly and not have to rely solely on the two teachers in the room for all of the answers. I think that's really important for our kids today, to be able to have that independence to really become self-directed learners. It's also allowed for our class time, the 85 or 90 minutes that we're in a humanities class, to focus more on analytical thinking than just standing in front of the room and give content and teach kids information. You know, we're lucky enough to have a hand on something that gives us out to the outside world. I think that's really valuable as well. Going on with that, I'll speak directly to the humanities. The freshman class is humanities. The junior class is called American Studies. The freshman class they're reading a book, Walkabout, and they're studying Australia. And what's been great is they used Google Earth and Google Maps to get a better sense for that continent. They compared Australia to the United States of America. They were able to look at topography in a way that you can't see on a topographic map. They could actually get down on street view and see Australia. They could be there. Even if they're on an iPad, they can still see it. The teachers said, and they can't be here tonight, but the teachers said that that's the way that you teach geography, not in a book, not just on a map. Giving kids the ability to remotely see the places they're studying makes it more real to them in a way that a book can't, if that makes sense. The last thing I'll say, and then if there are other questions, I think that my time is probably up. I will speak now to an American Studies example that's currently going on. We're reading the novel The Great Gatsby, and we've brought into our conversation about the 1920s also a book on the book list called Their Eyes Were Watching God. And we read two chapters from Their Eyes Were Watching God as a comparison to the very urban Gatsby story of the 1920s. It led us into a conversation of distribution of wealth myself in that era. And what we were able to do was create a DGO list and really give our kids, give our students the links of what we wanted them to research and complete. It was a self-directed activity with a little bit of front work on our part, but it really did reinforce the fact that kids need to direct themselves through this activity. It culminated in watching a TED Talk that was rich for debate when it comes to the topic of the distribution of wealth and how that impacts a society. We could use that to talk about what happened in the 1920s, and we could use that as a more current piece to really assess that theme, that topic. So it's been, I would say that by and large, it's allowed us to really focus on that, a lot more higher order 21st century skills than in other places where we don't necessarily have daily access to these kind of materials. So again, I thank you. I invite you to come into our classrooms. We will be doing a blog throughout the year to keep track of the skills that we're developing, the projects that we try, remembering always that this is a pilot program and not everything is going to go perfectly every time. We would like to hear voices from our students, to hear from them how this is helping, how it might not be helping at times, because the last thing we want is using technology for the sake of using technology. We're really focused on bringing this when appropriate. So thank you very much for having me, and thanks for your willingness to take that type of risk.
And thank you for sharing this with us.
All right. Well, congratulations to you, Daryl,
Thank you.
for a well-deserved honor. And Amy, again, to you and everyone involved in the Ed Fund, we thank you so much for your continued dedication to the Westfield Public Schools. With that, if anybody would like to comment or questions on the Mitch?
Well, yeah, OMG. I mean, that's first of all, thank you so much to the Ed Fund. This is fantastic. And as chair of the Ad Hoc Tech Committee, I think all of us on the committee certainly would agree that we want to make a special thank you for making this happen. This is really terrific. Our technology initiative is up and running strongly this year, and this donation will just help even move the ball forward even more. All across America, technology, specifically iPads, are reigniting students' enthusiasm for learning, and that's what it's all about. And thank you so much to the Education Fund for making this happen, for Nancy, all the great work you're doing, for the teaching that's going on. I know we can do even more, so this is great. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving into announcements. Gretchen, anything you're in?
I do. Classroom Close-Up in New Jersey is a 30-minute weekly series program that focuses on successful innovative projects happening in New Jersey schools. The TV program, which is the winner of 11 Emmys, came to Westfield High School before the end of the school year to tape the Project 79 classrooms for the day. The segment of Day in the Life of Project 79 will be broadcast on NJTV on Sunday, October 7th at 6:30 a.m., 12:30 p.m., and 7:30 p.m. In addition, Peter Horn, coordinator of Project 79, was interviewed by Steve Adubadu for his one-on-one program. That interview will air on NJTV on Friday, October 5th at 7 p.m. and 11:30 p.m.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes. This is from Westfield High School. 5 Westfield High School seniors have been named semifinalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program. They are Owen Brown, Andre Chang, Jeffrey Marino, Eric Michalauskas, and Eric Oberman. According to the National Merit Scholarship Corporation, the nationwide pool of semifinalists represents less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors and includes the highest scoring entrants in each state on the preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. They will have an opportunity to continue in the competition to become a finalist for the 2013 Merit Scholarship Awards that will be offered in the spring. Congratulations.
More accomplishments from the Westfield High School students from the Westfield High School. With the latest SAT announcements received from Westfield High School, the total number of 800 scores for the 2011-2012 school year has reached 57. The newest scores for May and June 2012 were achieved by the following students: Michael Aronson, Edmund Hahn, Jeffrey Coe, Adam Lepicki, Eric Oberman, Michael Riley, Alexander Beals, Riyad Carey, Andres Chang, David Kui, Mark Gillespie, Timothy Huber, Zachary Jaffe, Alexandra Capadia, Jeffrey Marino, Benjamin Schwartz, Austin Thien, Yixu Wang, Jinyang Zhao, Alex Ying, and Rebecca Zhang. Congratulations to these students on these remarkable achievements.
Mitch?
No.
Jane?
Just some breaking news. We heard that the girls' varsity tennis team are Union County champs, so congratulations to them.
It's terrific. Peg?
Yes. As is the case in public schools throughout New Jersey, this week the Westfield Public Schools are observing a week of respect. Not only do our students regularly learn mathematics and writing and humanities, as we just heard, in our schools, but they are also learning how to treat others. During this first week of October, the state asks us to bring attention to all we do to make our schools caring communities. Our youngest students are reading books that tell stories of respect, of being considerate of the feelings of others, of dealing peacefully with anger and disagreements. At the intermediate level, teachers will be infusing the theme of respect and tolerance into teaching of their daily lessons. In addition, at Edison School, Carrie Travanovich will speak to the students regarding character building and bullying. In Roosevelt, counselors are teaching lessons to the students, and the Rachel's Challenge program will continue the work of last year regarding chain reactions of kindness throughout the building. At Westfield High School, the upperclassmen who are on the transition team have been meeting with freshmen to discuss the culture of respect that we work to instill in our high school. Additionally, teachers are providing age and subject area instruction focusing on preventing harassment, intimidation, and/or bullying during this week. And again, this week we highlight the efforts of our schools to make sure that our students are learning to respect others. But truly, although we have a focus this week, we work on this each and every day, and we work in cooperation with the parents of our students in this very important lesson.
Thank you. I have three announcements. First, with respect to school closings. The Westfield Public Schools will be closed on Monday, October 8th, in observance of Columbus Day. Our next Board of Education meeting will be Monday, October 22nd. The meeting will be held in the boardroom at 302 Elm Street, beginning at 7:30 p.m. And the change to Monday from Tuesday is due to the New Jersey School Board Association's annual meeting. Again, that's Monday, October 22nd. I have one final announcement this evening, which relates to news that I just received this past Sunday night. Tonight, I reluctantly announce that my friend and colleague, Dave Finn, is resigning from the Westfield Board of Education, effective immediately. Unfortunately, Dave could not be here in person tonight and has asked that I read the following statement from David Finn. Good evening, members of the Board of Education, administration, teachers, staff, residents, and students of Westfield. It is with regret and very mixed emotions that I am resigning my position as a member of the Westfield Board of Education. Due to an urgent family medical matter, I will not be able to devote the required attention to the important work that we do. Over the past 3.5 years, I have thoroughly enjoyed the intellectual challenges presented by operating a school district the size and complexity of ours. The relationships I have built with each of you and the successes we have achieved on behalf of the students and residents in this great town. I know no other citizens more dedicated than you, my fellow board members. To the administration, teachers, and staff, your tireless devotion and dedication to our students amaze me. and provide a great example of what a high-performing school district can do when we all work together. To the residents and taxpayers, I am honored to have served you. Trust and know that the remaining members of the Board of Education will always have the long-term interests of our district at heart. And to our students, keep striving, keep inquiring, and keep making this town proud with your spirit, your achievements, and your dedication to lifelong learning. Sincerely, David Finn. David, you will be missed on this board. From the time that you and I began our respective campaigns, when we first ran for the board back in 2009, I have enjoyed debating the issues with you, proposing solutions, and most importantly, helping to find answers as to how best to maintain Westfield's tradition of excellence in education. Neither one of us knew what we were getting ourselves into, or the long hours, piles of reading material, and countless late-night meetings that awaited us as we joined the board together as the new guys among more seasoned professionals. I appreciated your support as a fellow board member year after year, and most recently as vice president of the board, helping to support all of us in continuing the critical work in support of the district's mission. You brought a strong analytical mindset and the right financial tools to the board. And without a doubt, you weren't afraid to use them. You were thoughtful in your consideration of matters, putting the students first, and you worked well as a team member, most recently chairing the negotiations committee, serving as a member of the facilities committee, and jumping in as an alternate on various other committees where needed. You also served on long-range planning and as liaison to the Special Education's Parents Committee, the Recreation Committee, the Library Board, Edison Intermediate School, and Franklin Elementary School during your tenure on the board. No doubt we will say a more formal goodbye in January when we meet to welcome in the new board members and to say our goodbyes to those who are leaving the board. While it is unfortunate that you are exiting just a few months early, we understand, and I am fortunate that we will no doubt continue our friendship outside the Board of Education. Thanks again, Dave. Anyone else want to say a few words? Jenny?
Yeah. I want to thank Dave for his work as a negotiator and especially for his work as our chair. Dave brought, as you know, great personal and professional expertise and understanding of health plan offerings, their design and management, and his knowledge will be missed by us. Dave freely shared his valuable insight and perspective on wellness programs and helped steer our understanding of the healthcare industry. We will all have to work harder now to gain personal confidence to successfully negotiate in these critical areas. Dave's knowledge will be missed. Dave also brought a strong voice of balance to our bargaining sessions, supporting our need to develop a comprehensive, effective cost over the life of a contract, as well as helping to communicate the rationale for our financial proposals and our cost containment positions. Personally, having Dave by my side during collective bargaining sessions was reassuring, and I thank him for that work.
Thank you. Mitch?
I want to add to what Rich has said and Jenny. I'm very sad to see Dave leave. There are those that have doubted recently the meaning of the word volunteer. These people have never met David Finn. He truly burned the candle at many ends to get solutions and save this district money. His guidance through recent negotiations, as Jenny said, especially in the healthcare arena, was critical. Personally, I learned a great deal from Dave, most importantly, to be a good listener and understand all the facts before making any decisions, and always let your conscience guide you. So I feel very honored to have Dave as my friend as well, and feel lucky that we did have this time to serve Westfield together, and I wish him nothing but the best.
All right. Well, Dave served on a number of committees. With respect to the current committees he served on, just so people know, the Facilities Committee, Gretchen has volunteered to take his spot on the Facilities Committee. So that committee will be comprised of Jane Clancy, Mark Friedman, Gretchen Olig, and myself. Roseanne will remain as alternate. Negotiations, Dave serves as chair of that committee. Ginny Lights has volunteered to take over as chair. So that committee will be comprised of Ginny, Ann Carey, Gretchen Olig, and Mitch Slater. Dave also served on policies. Jane Clancy, who was the alternate to policies, has volunteered to serve out the rest of her term on policies. So that committee will be comprised of Roseanne Kerstedt as chair, Jane Clancy, Mark Friedman, and Gretchen Olig. And then with respect to the committees where Dave was an alternate, given the short period of time between now and January, we're just not going to fill those spots, and we'll take it as it comes. With respect to filling Dave's board seat, we have been in contact with the county superintendent, and we were informed that we do not need to fill that seat, given the proximity to not only the November election, but then the installation of new board members in January. That leaves the vice president seat, and I'm happy to have discussion and take nominations for the position of vice president.
I'd like to nominate Roseanne Kerstedt as vice president.
A second.
Okay. Any other nominations? All right. Can we do a roll call?
Rich Matasek?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kerstedt?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yeah.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
All right, congratulations. Move on up.
Pass
There you go.
notes through you, Ann.
All right. At this time, I'd like to recognize the public for agenda items only. All right. Seeing no one come to the podium, we'll move into the superintendent's reports.
Well, we do have two superintendent reports tonight. The first one deals with moving forward regarding facility needs, and the second one has to do with proposed changes to the teacher evaluation model. But actually, for the first superintendent reports, I believe I am handing this right back to you, Mr. Matesa.
Thank you. The first report relates to our facilities projects. On Monday, September 24th, 2012, the town of Westfield was presented with a $16.9 million bond referendum to replace approximately 77% of our school's roofs and to install a turf field at the high school. Approximately 25% of our citizens eligible to vote participated in the process. While it may not sound like a lot, it is an impressive turnout for a school-related vote. More important was the voting result. More than 2/3 of those who voted no to the bond referendum, thereby sending a strong message to the school board regarding their appetite to pursue such a bond in its current configuration. Discussions have indicated that the reasons for failure were broad-based, including our bundling of the roofs and turf field into one vote, a desire that we undertake these projects out of operating budget dollars, a continually weak economy and a feeling that a turf field is a luxury not meriting consideration in this or perhaps any economy, a sense that taxes are already too high, a Board of Education that didn't present a united front with respect to the bond issuance, the grassroots efforts of our citizens against the bond, and the list goes on. Notwithstanding all of these reasons, the cold fact remains that a majority of our roofs need to be replaced. We will find a way to do that. In my view, it will involve a bond issuance because the amount of dollars needed for all of that work cannot be pulled from our operating budget without decimating program. I do not believe that large-scale cutbacks would be okay with this Board of Education. But we will discuss whether we need to make some level of program cuts in order to fund some of the roof replacements from our operating budget. We will discuss scaling back the roof project. We will consider replacing some of the roofs now and continuing to patchwork the rest until we can fund their replacement through other means. Clearly, we have some hard choices to make as a board. We believed, and we continue to believe as a board, that undertaking all of the work at once is the most efficient course. Interest rates are low, and we could have been done next summer. We also understand loud and clear that is not what the voters want. The next time we can go out to bond is December 11th. The deadline to notify our county of our intention to do so is next week. The deadline for a November vote has passed. Clearly, we need to discuss tonight whether we will notify the county next week that whether we intend to propose a bond in December for our roofs. And if we do decide that we will proceed in December, we still need more time to determine how much we would request for the referendum. We can make that determination as late as our November 13th public board meeting. This preserves flexibility for the board. The cost to preserve that flexibility would be nominal, and we can always withdraw the application altogether if we determine as a board that it is better to wait. In coming weeks, this board will leverage all of the roof work we have done to date to determine what must be put into a bond. We will no doubt discuss which roofs have active leaks, which roofs are beyond their useful life, whether or not they have active leaks, which roofs can wait a year or two, and which roofs can be deferred for several years. Unfortunately, that latter category is not much of a discussion, but we will push on it. And this board will discuss the alternatives to bonding for our roof. As I mentioned, we need to consider what we can pay for from operating funds and what we can pay for from capital funds. These discussions will necessarily involve trade-offs. Utilizing operating funds to repair our roofs may require program cuts, while utilizing capital funds will take away from the projects we currently have slated for completion under our existing 5-year facilities plan. These could well be very difficult conversations to the extent we may all have differing views and priorities. We will start this dialogue this evening and continue on October 22nd and November 13th. Both public meetings where feedback from the public is welcome. We will also meet in committees, with the Facilities Committee drilling down on a roof priority list and the Finance Committee drilling down on ways to cover roofing costs and what the resulting trade-offs may be. With regard to the turf field, again, we have heard the voters. This board will have to decide as part of these discussions whether we believe it is the prudent thing to do to again ask our voters to approve a turf field as a separate line item in a bond referendum. We will have to decide tonight whether we are going to notify the county of that intention. At the same time, we need to discuss the proper prioritization of our time and energy in light of the dire condition of our roofs to determine whether roofs should become our sole #1 priority right now. But regardless, the cold fact remains that our fields need work. We may all differ in our view on what a field should be, but this Board of Education continues to hold a unified belief that we have an obligation to offer safe fields for our athletes. We will have to discuss whether reasonable capacity for all sports is needed. We will have to discuss the voter sentiment that it is not a priority to keep up with other towns or to seek more state-of-the-art facilities. If we don't issue a bond to achieve these things, we will have to discuss where needed funds will come from. As with the roofs, it may mean program cuts or reallocation of other facilities projects to free up dollars to improve fields. It may mean taking a field out of commission for a while to revamp the playing surface, or simply cutting back playing time during the week to allow for more repair. It may mean dedicating fields solely to that school's primary usage, such as PE class, without the added burden of after-school or weekend town programs. These are conversations we need to have. We have heard the voters' reality, and we will find a solution. If we decide not to bond the field project, bond deadlines are no longer relevant. A benefit of heading into the winter months is that the fields are not as heavily utilized as outdoor sports changed to indoor sports. So if we do not recommend resubmitting a bond to the county with respect to the fields tonight, we will in time seek alternative solutions to our field needs. Before I turn the conversation over to Dana to begin a discussion of these projects, I want to highlight a couple of the comments that have been swirling about that have the potential to continue to be unproductive distractions. Many of you have suggested and continue to state that our roofs are a problem the board created by its failure to save for future replacements. That may be, but I'm not sure how we can say that so quickly when the law precluded prior boards from saving funds for long-term purposes such as this. I do, however, understand the frustration. The problem is that we are where we are, and all we can really do is learn from it and move forward. Importantly, the law did change in recent years, and saving long-term is now permitted. And this board has said from the start that an important discussion in any undertaking would be whether we should have a plan to save for future repairs and replacements. Saving a little each year as we go, can go a long way when the next cycle of replacements comes our way. We have not backed off that sentiment, and it will be discussed. I will also touch briefly upon solar. As we said many times, solar would not add even 1 penny more to the roof project. It would be a benefit to the district if pursued after the roofs are repaired. Given the uncertainty of the solar market, we can't know today what the savings would be to the district if we went solar, nor will we try. We need our roofs replaced, period. Not for solar or for anything else. We simply need new roofs. Whatever happens in coming weeks and months, this board will continue to do what it thinks is the right thing for the district, being mindful that cost constraints and fiscal realities require that we prioritize in a manner that balances our needs with the voters' desires. I am confident we will find the right solution. And while we continue to put time and effort into these projects, you can be certain that more importantly, we will continue to watch over a public school district that actually does really well, educating over 6,300 students year after year. With that, I'd ask Dana to take us into a discussion on the projects. Thank you.
The referendum held on September 24th requested approval of a bond issuance for a total of $16.9 million, as you know. $13.6 million of that amount was for roofing replacements. Thank you. At every school, at the board office, and at Kaler Stadium Fieldhouse. Following the defeat of the referendum last Monday, we are reevaluating our plans and reprioritizing the roofing needs. We will look to reduce the amount requested in a new bond referendum by deferring roof replacements at some buildings, by funding some projects out of our maintenance reserve account. In preparation for the referendum, the district had a roof assessment survey done on all roofs in the district. A number of the roofs are beyond their useful life, have active leaks, and no longer provide weather protection. These roofs can no longer be repaired and therefore require replacement as soon as possible. Funding for capital projects of this magnitude must be funded with bonds. The issuance of bonds allows the cost to taxpayers to be spread over the life of the project, which in this case is 20 years. School districts are only allowed to increase the tax levy on the operating budget by 2% per year. The allowed tax levy increase in the 2013-14 budget will be approximately $1.7 million, plus allowable adjustments for certain expenses such as enrollment increases, if there are any. This increase must cover all increases including salaries, special education, transportation, insurance, utilities, etc. The high school roof is beyond its useful life and is top priority to be replaced at an estimated cost of $4 million. To fund this project out of the operating budget, the district would face reductions to staff and programs similar to 2010, when state aid was dramatically reduced. And that was also about $4.2 million. At that time, reductions were made to librarians, counselors, teachers, intramural and middle school sports, among other things. As I stated earlier, these reductions would only cover the cost of the high school and would not address the needs of all of our other schools. The district has used the operating budget to fund a number of smaller maintenance projects. During the last school year and over the summer, the district used funds from the operating budget to fund the purchase of technology equipment, replacement of windows and doors, renovations to bathrooms, replacements of boilers, repairs to chimney and masonry work, and parking lot repairs. The district held the referendum in September because we were hoping to have all the construction finished by the end of the summer 2013. It is no longer possible to have all the roofs replaced in that time frame. If the board approves a special election in December, we will attempt to have 1 or 2 schools finished in the summer of 2013, and the rest will be deferred to 2014 or beyond, depending on the amount of the referendum. For the reasons stated above, we are recommending that the board notify the Union County Board of Elections that you intend to hold a special election in December for roof replacements. Since our priority is to replace at least the high school roof next summer, we recommend we table the discussion of the field turf at this time. The actual amount and wording of the bond question can be determined at the October 22nd board meeting. You could also push that to November 13th, but that is getting very close to the actual deadline. So the recommendation from the county and also from our board attorney is to try to approve that on October 22nd, if you can.
Okay. I'll open it up for discussion.
Question. Sure. Dana, in our facilities discussion, we talked about the mechanics of having a bond issuance for X dollars, but perhaps only using a portion of that, let's say let's assume we made up a number that we were going to bond 8 million, 10 million, whatever it is, but we thought we could only execute the high school for 4 million for the summer of 13. Can you talk a little bit about the mechanics of how that happens? Do we bond the whole thing? Do the bonds get sold? Do we only, what happens?
The board has several options. You would have to make a decision as we get to the point where we'd have to start awarding contracts, which would be probably in the spring sometime. You would make a decision on whether you wanted to issue short-term financing, or if you wanted to sell the bonds at that time. It would be based on what you thought, what interest rates were at that time and what you were projecting, not that any of us can really project interest rates. So you could either sell them all, you could do short-term financing, you could do a combination of financing. It's basically your choice. There are restrictions on prepaying the notes, so you'd have to have bond counsel included in that conversation. But it certainly would be something that we'd have to look at where we think interest rates are going and where they are at the time to make that judgment call.
Because obviously if we bonded 10 million and we were only spending 4 at the high school, we would conceivably be paying interest on 10 million for a period of time when we actually weren't expending funds to pay for roofs, right?
Which wouldn't make sense
Right.
unless we thought interest rates were going to go up a lot in a year, which is probably not the case, but correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So having not been in those committee meetings, saying it another way, we could have a bond referendum for $10 million and based on a project schedule, have a certain amount of bonds sold for supporting a $4 million project year 1. Year 2, we would then consider what the optimal way of financing another part of the project might be. another couple of schools, whatever they would be. And we would not have to bond the entirety of the referendum proceeds at any one time.
That's correct.
It could be phased in over time, depending on the projects and depending on the costs of those projects and depending on the financing that we would want to use.
That's correct.
Okay.
Dana, would we have to spend any money before December 11th to get work done next summer?
No, we would, that's why we would only be able to finish 2 roofs. The reason we had gone out in September was to give the architects time to draw the construction documents, to do the bid specs, because we would be losing those few months. We'd be hoping to get 2 schools done. The high school is the top priority, so that would be our push to get the high school done. We would have, obviously, election costs, but you wouldn't have any costs for the architect or any other engineering costs.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear more about our top priority. I know we've talked about the high school. I think it's important. I'd like to hear more, and I think the public probably wants to hear more about why that is the top priority. I know Mike Morris is here tonight. Do you have any thoughts on that? I just think it's critical that people understand the need.
Why the high school?
Why the high school specifically, and what?
Sure.
Sorry.
High school is a top priority because we have active leaks there. That's one of the schools where we have most of our active leaks. The roofs that are on there now aren't doing what they should do. They're supposed to protect the underlayment, which is the concrete, and it's not doing that. So we can't find the roofs the way they are now, that if it's leaking all the way by the math wing, the hole could be by the science wing. It's just a problem that just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
So clearly that's the
main
priority.
focus,
Right.
the high school.
Okay.
But Mike, when you say that, the high school has the most active leaks. Other buildings are leaking.
Oh, yes.
So I don't want
77% of our buildings are leaking.
I don't want, Mitch, I don't want you to
Oh.
think that fixing the high school cures our problem.
No.
No.
not at all.
I
Not at all.
just, I was mentioned the high school, and I just want to
Okay.
hear specifically about that. Obviously, there are other
Oh,
top
yes.
priorities.
Whole district, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please, Stephanie.
What is the second priority, and is there a safety concern at any of the schools?
Safety concern? No, there's no safety concern. The structures are fine. It's the roofs themselves that the water gets through. Wintertime they freeze. Then they melt, and it's just getting worse and worse. Safety? No, there's no safety.
And the second priority, school?
My second priority would be Roosevelt.
So Dana, I think one of the things we'll want to see at the next meeting is a list of the roofs and the cost to repair and the status of the leaks and the, I
Yep.
think most of them are beyond useful life, but even if a couple of them have, 2 years, we'd want to see that.
Yeah, it would be our intent to give you a recommendation at the next board meeting as to the staging of the projects, the top priorities that we think we can do next summer, what would be deferred till 2014, and what projects we think we can take out of the maintenance reserve.
So I think one of the things for board members to do, if you can't do it tonight, is to let Dana know what it is you'd want to see in that presentation at the public meeting, because that'll be important, just to make sure we're hitting everybody's questions and concerns.
And just another note about next summer, some of these smaller buildings where we may be able to fund it out of our maintenance reserve, if we think we can do that, those projects also can probably get done next summer, because if we have the money in the reserve account now, we can give the architects the go-ahead to start working on those before December.
Well, that is, but if the bond didn't pass, we may reprioritize those dollars.
Right, so that's a decision you'll have to make
Right.
next week or whenever, of whether you want to go ahead with those.
Right.
Or wait and hold off, in which case they may not get done next summer.
Right. That's a good point. Any other questions at this time? Comments? Ginny?
Dana, as well as a staging proposal and a funding proposal, I think we would want to see a tax impact proposal. And whether or not there's any additional costs that we didn't anticipate. I know we didn't put a construction management oversight into the initial project. With smaller projects or smaller, fewer going on at the same time, it might not be as critical, but these are still very large projects.
They are.
So if you have any thoughts about that, I'd like to see them.
Gretchen?
I just wonder, is there any way to put a little more meat to the bones of, if the high school is our first priority, and that's estimated to cost $4 million, if that were to come out of the operating budget? I mean, I heard what you said about it looking similar to what it looked like when we lost about $4 million in aid from the state. What does that mean in real terms? How many teachers? What is... It would help me, and it would probably help the public to know what we're talking about in terms of what's really going to happen if we have to go to the operating budget for those funds.
You could prepare that, right?
Yes, we could actually even take a look at what did happen last time. It doesn't mean it would be exactly the same,
Right.
but it's certainly a comparison as to what happened last time when we had to lose that money, how many positions were eliminated, how many programs were eliminated or changed, collapsed.
Great.
Add one thing, I think it would be a good idea prior to the 22nd, as well as the board giving suggestions to Dana, that if the public have any suggestions of things they would like to hear for the 22nd, they send an email to us, and we can pass that on to Dana. So, we get kind of instant feedback. I think that would be, worth considering.
Sure.
Just two quick things. Just to clarify on your point about the capital reserve having a 2% cap, and stating that we now have a mechanism of savings either in capital improvements or maintenance improvement. There is also a cap on that.
Yes, even that's one.
So there isn't a limitless amount of money that we can save. That also has a cap.
Right.
But it is a new mechanism, I believe, within the past
Yeah, within the last couple of years, yeah.
Because districts are running into similar situations, I would imagine.
Yes, they are.
And then the other point, if we could just go back and clarify whether we would have to have any architecture work done prior to the December meeting. I think there might have something, a cost with construction documents or something, a partial cost?
It depends. You can, if you want to, have the architect start drawing up plans. You don't have to, but the risk you run if you don't spend any money is whether or not we can get, and what projects we can get out. Since the high school is our top priority, we would tell the architect to move forward with those first. He would have to, he would hope to get those done. He thinks he can get 2 of them done if we don't give him a go-ahead till December 12th. But you would be going out to bid in March, which is later than when we anticipated. You never know with bidding situations, you're subject to low bid, but you're also subject to challenges by bidders. Lately, the last few years in the economy that we've been facing, I've seen more challenges to bid specs and to actual bids than I saw for many years, because there's no work out there, basically. So, every bidder that submits challenges.
Even the timeline is extended.
And the timeline, right, that stops you from awarding a contract, or even after you've awarded, sometimes it stops them from proceeding with the contract until you, figure out the challenge. So that's the issue we run with the timing, because most of the work has to get done in the summer, or it's going to be disruptive to kids. I mean, we can do a little bit in September if we had to, but you certainly don't want to go way into September.
But can we just be clear then? So I would, unless, let me make sure I understood this, unless we're committed to doing the high school in the summer, either through the passage of a bond or through operating, I would suggest that we shouldn't be spending any money between now and the passage of a bond that would even help us to prepare for timing. I don't know, so that would be.
I agree.
I
Absolutely
agree with
agree.
that.
Okay.
And I don't think we are in that position.
Okay. Unless we said, hey, we're going to do the high school in the summer, come hell or high water.
I don't think we could say that.
Okay.
I
Then
wouldn't talk about it, but I
if
don't
that's,
think we can-
if we're
we can see
thinking
what that
of
looks
that, then
like.
I don't think we should be spending any money until that time.
Anyone else? So you need us to approve moving forward. You made two recommendations, though. So one was on the roofs and one was on the field. Roofs, you're recommending we make a submission without detail, just,
Right, because if you don't do
Get in
that
the
today, if you don't do that today, you won't be able to hold the December
Right.
election. So that'll at least put a placeholder.
right.
And
turf-
then
But it doesn't commit us to it.
it doesn't, it does not commit you. It might commit you to a small $1,400 or something that they have to spend, that the county's going to have to spend. But it doesn't commit you to it. Once you decide this is the question that we're going to put out there, then you're committed. You can't pull it back then. So you have to be sure when you make that call.
And you're saying that's our next meeting, preferably. We could potentially go to the 13th of November, but you don't recommend we do that.
Right, right.
And the turf field, you've recommended not pursuing at this time, given the roofing priority. Any discussion or questions on that point?
I think you said it very well in your statement, that we do have field issues that we still need to deal with, but because the roofs are of more urgency, and let's focus on those right now. So, the problem is not gone away for the fields, but we'll have to address those moving along.
So now we're under finance.
It's under finance as an addendum, so if you want to do it then, that's fine.
Sure. Any other comments or questions? So, ask the public. Anybody from the public have a comment or question solely on this discussion? Seeing no one come to the podium, we'll move on.
So, our second report has to do with a teacher evaluation system. The state of New Jersey actually has come out with requirements for districts to change methods of the way teachers are evaluated. And so we've had a committee working for over a year, and we're going to hear about some of their work this evening and where they are with that. So to start off, I'm going to introduce Barbara Ball, who is the head of our Human Resources.
Good evening. As Dr. Dolan said, doesn't seem possible, but almost 2 years ago, the state of New Jersey directed that by the start of the 2013-14 school year, all public schools in the state of New Jersey will be functioning with an approved teacher evaluation system that will include specific rubrics for teacher evaluation and have embedded within that evaluation student achievement. As Dr. Dolan said, Westfield took the directive seriously and starting now more than a year ago, began an exploration of those models that the state of New Jersey had vetted and approved for state use. Over the course of the last year, administrators, central staff members, supervisors, and teachers have gone to workshops and training sessions on the 5 different vetted models: Danielson, McCrell, Strong, Marzano, and Marshall. 2 of them looked more of a fit for Westfield than the others, and so last spring we brought a consultant from Marzano to the district to spend more time exploring that particular model with us. And then, on September 12th of this school year, we brought Kim Marshall to the district for a 4-hour exploration and training session on his model. And the committee that Dr. Dolan referenced, which the state requires, which is our Joint Staff Evaluation Committee, which has been in existence in this district for a very long time, and this year has been expanded to cover the responsibilities as the District Evaluation Advisory Committee. That group met with Dr. Dolan the day after Kim Marshall made his presentation in the district. All 5 models were considered, and it was the unanimous opinion of that committee to recommend to Dr. Dolan that Kim Marshall's model be put forward to you for approval as the model we will use in 2013-14 and going forward. Why did we pick that? Or why did we recommend it? Because to all of us, those of us who attended the workshop and those of us who explored the ramifications of it afterwards, the Marshall model is the only model that presents a workable framework to conduct more observations of teachers, which is one of the requirements of the state. The other 4 models said, you need to do more, but gave checklists. To Westfield, which has a proud tradition of evaluation, using a checklist did not make sense to us. What Kim Marshall has offered is a practical, constructed way to make frequent observations of teachers, and therefore have more frequent ways to check on how students are progressing and how teachers can continue to learn and grow. Every one of the models in the state must have a rubric attached. With Kim Marshall's, we felt that he was really looking at the important areas of instruction and, even more important, of good teaching. Among his 6 rubrics are planning and preparation, but he didn't stop there. He said it is planning and preparation for student learning, not just planning of objectives or writing good lesson plans, but really keeping the student learning in mind from the beginning. Monitoring, assessing, and following up. And the following up to all of us resonated because it wasn't just determining how the instruction was faring, but what we could do to offer follow-up, improvement, ways to learn and grow. He also includes classroom management, delivery of instruction, an important piece, family and community outreach, and professional responsibilities. In Kim Marshall, who was a Boston educator, who was a public school teacher, a public school principal, a central staff member, and now for the last 10 years a nationally recognized expert and consultant in the field of evaluation, he is an immensely approachable expert. He came to give the workshop rather than sending a member of staff. He picks up the telephone. We all have his cell phone number. He responds to emails. And he is excited about the fact that should Westfield choose this model, then he will have 4 districts in the neighborhood. He will have Milburn, the Morris Union Jointure, Summit, and potentially Westfield. And he feels that that is a rich opportunity for a consortium about teacher learning and growth that he would stay in close to. And last, and I purposely make this last, because it has not been a driver at all over the last year and the consideration of the committee that approached Dr. Dolan, is that the costs of this program are fiscally prudent. And I think that resonates with the type of conversation we're having at the table tonight. The other 4 models run between $60,000 and $120,000 a year annually. They are a cost per head of teachers. They involve materials which are licensed. And in Kim Marshall, he is an open source. And by that, he means that everything he produces is available to us at no charge. We can take his rubrics. We can use his indicators of quality, and they are there for us. The charges which would be there for us are that all of the models include software in order to expedite the types of observations and evaluations that administrators and supervisors would perform. While Marshall does not endorse nor get a penny from any program at all, he has found that the one that fits is one called T-Eval. T-Eval does not charge by the head. It is $1,200 for the first year per building, or $12,000. The next year it reduces to $1,000, and the year after that, $850. As we've explored and considered, we definitely have been mindful of the points of view of administrators and supervisors who will actively use this model, and teachers who will partner with it and learn and grow as a result of it. I'm delighted to be chair of this committee, and I'm pleased that Stu Carey, representing the administrators, Jan Fine, representing the teachers, and Roseanne, as a member of our committee, are all going to shed some light from their perspective on this new potential model. Stu.
Thank you, Ms. Bowling. Good evening to everyone. I'm going to try to keep my presentation short, very, very short. I think Barbara did a thorough job in explaining the Marshall Plan. As an administrator, the most important responsibility of a principal's job is hiring excellent teachers and then helping them to grow. Marshall's plan model of frequent observations is in alignment with this responsibility. Another critical component of this model is unannounced visits. And the unannounced visits help to see the authentic instruction going on in classrooms. Presently, our tenured teachers are observed formally one time a year, which I feel is totally inadequate. Marshall's plan calls over the course of a year for approximately 10 short visits that range anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. And at the end of that 15 to 20 minutes after the unannounced visit, we would have that conversation with the teacher and then followed by a written report. Over the course of those 10 visits, we get to see a pretty good picture of that teacher improvement or the different things that we are looking for in a 40-minute classroom period. That follow-up conversation and assessment after every observation provides ongoing feedback about the instruction. And lastly, in utilizing this model, the rubrics that are embedded in Marshall's plan provide measurement for the critical components of instruction. Currently, we can go into, I'm in classrooms quite often There are times when I have the opportunity to ask the teacher to stop by and see me, and I can ask for clarification on something I saw, or talk in terms of a strategy that I particularly liked during that lesson. But in Marshall's plan, I'm required to have that conversation, that 15 to 20-minute conversation, and I'm required to write that formal report. So over the course of the 10 visits I make, I can observe a teacher's plan. I'll know how he or she starts a class. I'll look for the methodology that matches the objectives. I'll look for engagement, student activities, closure, and I'll be able to see those things frequently in a 10-visit observation over the course of a year. Currently, that just doesn't happen, and so I think that the Marshall Plan, and I took the visit with Barbara down to New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association and listened to the parts about Danielson and Marzano and Krell and Strong, and I too feel that utilizing, after reading Marshall's book and looking at his plan, I think it is an ideal fit for this district. And so I, along with a lot of the administrators, endorse this plan. Any questions? Thank you.
I do have a question. So you're going from one formal evaluation per year to these 10 unannounced evaluations, and I'm just wondering if that's going to put a burden on you to make 10 trips, and how you envision that happening, working out.
Currently, just let me give you an idea. I supervise, I'm the administrative supervisor for the science math department, physical education, special education, and fine arts. Over that time, I would do, for a tenured teacher, one formal observation. If it's a non-tenured teacher, I'm going to do 5 observations, 3 of which are informal, which means that they aren't written. 2 that will not be written and 3 that will be written. And I'm watching a whole lesson. Often you hear of the dog and pony show. I don't see that. We have hardworking teachers, and we're constantly checking lesson plans so that if I walk in at any time of the period, I know exactly, I should have a good idea of exactly what is being taught in the classroom. But walking in on an unannounced, you're going to see true teaching, and the teacher won't be able to change that model within that 40-minute period. You're going to see how well they plan a lesson. You're going to see whether or not it articulates with what is supposed to be going on within the curriculum. You're going to know how well a teacher closed a lesson and how well they opened one. You're going to find out whether or not there's critical engagement. You're going to find out whether or not technology is being embedded within that. You go in for a formal observation, and often you may see a teacher trying to put all of that together in one 40-minute visit. Sometimes it works well, at other times it falls short of its desired goal because they are trying to impress you. However, if you're going in for 10 times over the course of the year, which right now I would say on the average, I'm probably in most teachers' classes at least 10 times in the areas that I cover. My assistant principal has departments that he also covers. our supervisors, district supervisors are also in. So over the course of that year, I don't foresee a problem why we could not get in to do the 15 to 20 minute snapshot of a class. Yes, ma'am.
Do you anticipate that these observations, these drop-ins will be multiple people working together? I know in the past observations have often been a supervisor and a principal.
In July of the year, I usually sit down with my secretary and plan my calendar as far as observations are concerned. And if Barbara had the language arts department, I would give her the dates of my observations for the language arts department. And I would say to her, I will ask that you cover the following teachers on these visits. So, and then at the end of those visits, Barbara and I sit down for the final evaluation of the year, and we go over all of the different components of effective instruction. And then we write the observation, the end of the year eval together. So Barbara would see the language arts department, all members of her department, and so would I. So I would not be covering all 6 or 7 of those teachers in that department for 10 visits. Barbara would probably be covering part of them, and I would be covering the other part.
So how will it change or be the same or impact supervisors using the Marshall model with the potential for multiple drop-ins that you might actually have to schedule with another individual?
You would have to, I mean, it's going to take proper prior planning, but that's not something that I'm opposed to, something that I haven't done before. So, I mean, it's just the fact that we sit down and we do it. I do it every July with my secretary, and my teachers get a copy of their observations, or knowing exactly what date I'm coming in for formal in early September. They know that immediately. The good part is with this, with the unannounced visits, you know, there's the old story, you know, you got guests coming, so you want to make sure your house is clean, everything is straightened up. You know, my position is to keep your house clean all the time so people can come visit you whenever they want to. That's the same approach I take as far as instruction is concerned. You do your job all the time.
We do have 2 other people who are going to present, so, I mean, I certainly mean to jump on your question, but we do have 2 other people, so.
Does this include, you mentioned tenured teachers. Is there a distinction in the way that this model approaches non-tenured teachers, or are they considered in the same
They're considered the same. They're considered the same, and that's one of the good parts, because you can sit down, as I said to you at the beginning, you know, our job is to help teachers grow, and having 10 visits a year with them. And quite frankly, teachers are used to seeing instructors in the classroom, so it's not all of a sudden I'm shocked, because here's an administrator. We're in classrooms all the time. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to see everybody again. I'm a school counselor. I'm also the newest member to the Joint Staff Evaluation Committee, and I guess I really came in at a good time. So being a counselor, I'm going to talk about my feelings first about this method. And I really have to say that I really embrace it. The opportunity for me to have an open dialogue, to have a conversation with a supervisor 10 times a year is just wonderful. I am afforded the opportunity to be able to move around the building because I don't teach and I don't have to be somewhere at every minute of the day. So I do get to drop in and I do get to talk to people, but to know that somebody's going to visit me several times a year and take a look at what I'm doing with kids and then have a conversation with me about that absolutely thrills me. So I really do. I'm looking forward to a conversation that will hopefully praise me, give me suggestions, and help me grow as a professional. Because as I grow, my students grow, and that's really what it's all about. I feel that the supervisors are an incredible resource, and to have that much time with them, because the whole model is based on the conversation that you have with your supervisor after the visit. And to have that resource at my fingertips more than once a year, more than twice a year, or when I was non-tenured 3 times a year, is really something that I am really looking forward to. We don't operate, in Westfield, we don't operate on a supervisor coming in and saying, oh, I got you making a mistake. We don't do it that way. The whole purpose is to teach. The whole purpose is to help us become highly effective in all of our areas so that we can impact student learning. I've just gotten such a really good feeling from all the supervisors that sit on the committee. Mr. Carey had said once, what I like about our present model is that I get to write a narrative about what I see and what a teacher is doing, and I can put in suggestions, and rather than, this is going to be great because they won't have to spend 2 or 3 hours writing that, we can talk about it several times a year. So that's something that I'm excited about as well. I do want to talk about the rubrics a little bit, because when I first saw the first teacher rubric, I thought, oh my goodness, how are we ever going to sift through all of that information? Because the detail involved in his rubrics, and there are several domains, it's really just a little overwhelming at first. But he suggested a way to look at it while we were in this workshop, and so that's what I did. And it automatically focused me in one direction. And I was reading what it is to be an effective teacher. And then I could look at myself and say, well, in this area, do I fall short? And then I could see, well, how short do I fall there? Or is this an area of real strength? And then I could see myself as possibly being highly effective in that area. So as overwhelming as the rubric may look firsthand, it really isn't. And what it, we've already heard, it's not a checklist. And so what it can provide is an actual measurement of where I might be in a particular domain. So that in itself is valuable. A checklist can absolutely remind me of all the skills that I need or use or want to have. But to have a rubric where I could see where I fall and then kind of almost develop a professional improvement plan just from that. Here's another bonus with the Marshall Plan. He already has rubrics developed for non-teaching staff. As we sat in all the other models, everybody said, well, we could tweak it for you. But nobody had a rubric already developed for a counselor. And this is how just really wonderful the group was. He said, here's an email address, contact this district, and they'll give you the rubrics. Well, I contacted, September 12th, we had the workshop. September 13th, around 10 a.m., I emailed this woman in Westwood, Massachusetts, and by 2 o'clock before our joint staff evaluation, I had, I think 9 or 11, 12 different rubrics for IT people, special ed teacher, guidance counselor, nurse, library and media specialist, and the list is long, so I'm just naming a few that I recall. And so that's already done. Nobody has to tweak anything. And so, of course, I looked at the guidance counselor rubric, and I already have my professional improvement plan for next year. And it really did. It gives me something to work towards. It gives me something, just like Barbara mentioned, the different domains under the teaching rubric. For counselors, it's planning and preparation, just like in teachers. Then it's counseling, all the skills that I use as a counselor. It's also family and community outreach, and then all of our professional responsibilities. And I thought to myself, gee, I wonder if the professional responsibilities for me are going to be any different from a special ed teacher or from a school psychologist. And I went and I just compared that briefly, and they're not the same. So it is not a cookie-cutter rubric for every different kind of job with just maybe one area being different. It's well thought out, and they really did a nice job. So I also did want to say about it is that as I went through it, I started to think about what I had, the assessment, the self-assessment that I start to think about in March and April, that I hand in to my supervisor to say, well, this is what I've done outside of the classroom, and this is what I've done in the school, and this is where I think I need to go. And to tell you the truth, I found this model very congruent with all the things that I think about when I reflect upon myself at that point in the school year. So that's what I have to say about the rubrics. The write-ups, we haven't spent much time. I haven't seen one yet. But they're short and specific. They should be short and specific, which I don't have to take up a whole lot of time reading. A long evaluation, nobody needs to take that length of time to write up a long evaluation. So this is short and specific, and what I really like about it is that it comes after the conversation. So I'm not going to have any surprises if I pay attention to what my supervisor is saying. I'm not going to have any surprises in that write-up because we've already had that conversation, and I would really, really appreciate that. There are a couple of concerns. If I'm sitting at the edge of my chair and there's a student right across from me, please don't come into my office at that point in time. So I am concerned, since that is what I do, how is somebody going to observe me doing what I'm doing, because somebody coming into the room changes the dynamic. But I do presentations, and I would invite anybody into a junior conference at any point in time. So there are ways that you can observe me, and you can watch me through the door, because there's a window in my door, of course, and you can watch me as I work with a student, and you can see the engagement that I often have. So I wouldn't mind that. But there are different kinds of staff members are difficult to observe in this model, and I do think that we do need to be mindful of that, and I do believe we'll figure it out. So I'm excited.
Thank you.
I agree with what everyone has said thus far. What I really like about this model, as has been said before, is that it really focuses on real teaching. It's not the show, it's what's happening on a daily basis, and it's ongoing. It also, what I really like about this is that it provides the teachers and administrators with a common language to talk about what does highly effective look like. And it's a starting point. So by using those rubrics and reading and talking about and using the language in the rubrics, everybody across the district will be using the same language, and everybody across the district will have a common vision for what a highly effective teacher looks like. And I think that is really, really important. I also love the fact, and I'm so glad that Jan brought it up, that she already looked at the rubric and was already self-assessing herself, but embedded in his program is a self-assessment the teachers do. And at the end of the year, or at some point throughout the year, there is a conversation between the administrator, supervisor, and teachers where they match or map up against, well, here's my self-assessment, here's how supervisor, here's how administrator. And again, that is just another entry point of how to talk about the teaching and areas that are strengths, and then areas that need improvement. I think that this model of the other models that were provided to districts to decide upon is more personal, and teaching is a personal act, and I think that the evaluation of teachers should be personal as well. So the day-to-day interactions, the immediate feedback is really, really important. And I'm not sure anybody mentioned, the current system is satisfactory and unsatisfactory. And as we have discussed at this board table, that's an interesting dichotomy and way to evaluate people. In the Marshall model, there are 4 levels, so there is certainly a distinction needs to be made. And he talked a lot about, and I think this is, all of the systems have 4 levels, right? That it's a forced choice. There's highly effective, partially effective, and
Doesn't meet standards.
doesn't meet standards. They used to be ineffective. They changed it to doesn't meet standards. So it's going to be a shift in how, I mean, it's going to take time to get comfortable with the system, but I think it's a more realistic system of evaluation, where, as opposed to satisfactory and unsatisfactory. And I think his rubrics are the best that's out there right now for us to use. And as Jan said, you know, there's some tweaking and there are some kinks that we'll need to work out. But I think it's exciting that we're moving in this direction. Oh, sorry, and I think the board will have a lot more information too, and we will be discussing and have the common language of what highly effective is and looks like.
I was just going to ask Barbara that, I guess maybe for you, what will we see differently? And is it frequency or data or content or?
I think that will be part of the conversation led by Dr. Dolan as we go through this year. There are timelines that are put out by the state. For example, by the 31st of October, we have to have our committee set. We're ahead of schedule on that. By the 31st of December, we not only have to have endorsed, you have to have endorsed a model, but we have to submit it in a formal proposal to the state. That template has not come out yet. The state is giving us information monthly. So more information is going to come about how achievement will be measured and embedded within the rubrics. Not all of that information has been yet determined by the state. They sent a very forthcoming memo during September that said that the pilots that had gone on in the state for the first year didn't provide everything that everyone needed, and so the pilots are continuing for a second year. And that's one of the issues, that was what could they determine of how to embed and get authentic information about student achievement out of it. So more will come with that. We will have this software program that administrator to supervisor can look and see if Stu is writing his 1,200 characters on a member of the language arts department, I would be able to see it and add my own back and forth. I think because we're going to have more information, then Dr. Dolan is going to have more information that they can provide, can be provided to all of you as a board.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I just ask one question, one clarification? I may not have the language right, but if I understood what you said, one of the domains on the rubric was family and community outreach.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly does that mean? Are you talking about student and parent input into a teacher's evaluation, or is it in it?
Both ways, and how a teacher does outreach and inclusion with families and within the community. I think what might inform the conversation, Dr. Dolan has asked that tonight be the introduction to this, and that you're going to see me up here regularly. I was going to say frequently, maybe not frequently, but regularly as we go through the year. If it's okay with you, Dr. Dolan, then to send all of you the rubrics in the Friday packet, so that you can take a good look at them and see what's embedded at all 4 levels in each of the 6 domains, and then maybe that will be a topic for conversation at another board meeting. Our thinking now is that by the board meeting on November 13th, that you would be ready to vote on endorsing this proposal or asking us to look elsewhere.
Just a quick question. You had mentioned that Kim Marshall is in several other districts, Summit, Melbourne. Did they already pilot this program, or they're sort of on the same track as we are?
The Jointure and Milburn are in the identical place as we. Well, that's not true. They're a couple of weeks ahead of us because they have now said this is their model of choice. Summit chose it in June, and so they kicked it off in pilot format first day of school. And that is terrific for us because we frequently do workshops with Summit, and so we have an intermediate school principal in Summit and Matt Block who can talk with Stu about how this is going in his building and where he's seeing the places that need more conversation. So I know we'll be working together through this year with somebody who's walking the road ahead of us.
Barbara, I tried to follow all your cost information, but I came up blank. I heard open source. I heard materials available at zero cost. I heard that the software program that was recommended, although he gets nothing from it, is year one, $12,000, year two, $10,000, year three, $8,500. And so what is his incentive for doing this? There must be a proprietary cost for what? Definition of rubrics, support, training?
For Kim Marshall?
Yes. I mean, there must be a cost to the model program itself of some level, maybe not at the $60,000 to $120,000 cost that other models are.
There isn't. He will come and train us at $1,000 a day.
Okay.
Beyond that, we bought his book.
Okay.
Because we thought that every administrator and supervisor should have it. I think our discounted cost is $28 a book.
Okay.
We have them for the board if they would like them. We gave them to the executive committee of the WEA so that they could join us in book club conversation about the book.
Okay. And what about the cost? Is there a cost to develop a data transfer, file transfer program to get the data from some system to the state? And back and forth?
Not that I have heard so far, but I think that's really information yet to come.
I don't think the state has described what they're looking for yet.
Not yet.
How about that?
But it's in the law.
Of course.
Law first, figure it out later.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No?
All right. We'll move to the minutes. And ask the board consider approving the amended minutes of their regular board meetings held on August 28, 2012, private minutes of August 28, 2012, and the minutes of the regular board meeting held on September 11, 2012. Could I have a second?
Yes. Second.
Discussion?
Lights.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any discussion on the minutes?
Thank you for the amendments, modification.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? All right. Personnel, Jane.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to ask for the board's approval of personnel items number 1 through 26.
Second?
Questions, discussions?
We do have one retirement. Nancy Rich, longtime secretary at Wilson Elementary School. For anyone whose children have gone to Wilson School, you know that is just about always the first face you see when you enter the school, and Mrs. Rich always knows what's going on. It doesn't matter how many events are going on and how many grades are doing different things. She has an encyclopedic memory when it comes to things Wilson. So we will certainly miss her work and her knowledge about that wonderful school.
We wish her well.
We do wish her well.
Rich Matassic?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
All right, facilities. Jane?
I think we'll be meeting, so Dana and I will talk, and then we'll try to get a facilities meeting either this week or early next week.
Great.
On the table. And I don't know if it's appropriate, there is a motion under an addendum under finance regarding Jefferson Field, so I don't know if you wanted me to maybe just quickly talk about that now.
Sure, it's a facilities project.
It is the field at Jefferson that we have been talking about for some time. We have approved the work on that field. It was one of the priority fields identified several years ago. We went into discussion with the town about that field because it is heavily used by the younger rec programs. Through that discussion, there was a discovery of a drainage issue with the pipes underneath the field. The town has since fixed that. The town also went out for a grant, which we talked, I think it's been about maybe over a year, I think, at this point, to help fund renovations at that field, which was approved. So tonight, all things are moving forward. The drainage was repaired, the grant was approved, and this is a true joint venture between town, school, and grant money. And it will involve regrading of the field, so it will be necessary to possibly start at the end of the fall and do their repair work and get it to grow a little bit before reopening at some point in the spring. So tonight the resolution is approving moving forward with that piece of it, of working with the town and with the grant money. Was there anything else on that?
Questions or comments? Ginny?
I'm surprised to hear you say that you think that the field would be open in the spring. I was having read a number of reports on field regeneration. I felt that it would for sure be taken out of service through the spring and the growing season to let the grass mature through the summer so it would be ready for school in the fall.
So the work would begin in the late fall, which is evidently a very good time to do some planting and
Right.
some growing, so that would actually be considered some of a growing season. And then go through winter and then get a portion of the growing season in the spring. So it's 2 half growing seasons. That would be the recommendation though at this point. The experts in that field feel that it could be opened up at some time in the spring. You know, what we have to our advantage on that field is that it is not a necessarily a varsity field, whereas, you know, when we close Tamaulipas, that involves high schoolers, varsity games, and has a different requirement as far as traffic and play. This was a safety issue for the t-ball teams and the youth soccer teams, and they fixed the problem of the drainage, which was causing some of the ruts and dips and that sort of thing. So once that's fixed and they get grass on there, it'll be good for those types of activities.
So it is possible, right? It won't be open in March or February or whatever. It may take longer.
I don't think it would be the beginning of
Right.
the spring. No, it
Right.
would have to be.
Right.
And there, you know, it's tricky to give a date. So we
No, I know,
wanna
and,
say,
and,
yeah.
and I think one of the reasons we're starting later is to not preclude this season of sports.
Right.
So we'll at least guarantee on this end we have playing time.
Mhm.
And we're doing our best to try to maintain that in the spring.
The architect is also writing the specs, hoping that the contractors are going to put sod in as
Right.
part of the base bid. They don't want to require that because it may make the price go up. But because they're going to require them to basically have the grass grow to a certain length before they let them off the hook, because the town's actually doing this bid. He's actually hoping that they may put sod in so that they can be done sooner, and which would be good for us.
So it wouldn't be to plant grass, it would be to grow grass,
Right.
which would be part of the contract.
I also think it's important to note that in facilities, we did talk about whether we should do the project at all, in light of the conversation we just had about turf field and any fields. And because this is a project we had approved moving forward on in the past, and it is a joint effort, meaning that we have a third coming from a grant, a third coming from the town, a third coming from the Board of Ed, we didn't want to just say no to that. And we may have had a different analysis if this were 100% funded by the Board of Ed, but it's a partnership. And we talked about moving forward with our part of the partnership, and it made sense.
It definitely would have been a very different conversation if this is something that we had been working on by ourselves.
Richard, Jane, was there any discussion, it's not just about the sports teams that play on that field, but the PE classes all happen
Yeah.
on that field. So to take the field out of rotation for that period of time, has there been any discussion about what's going to happen for those PE students, including my little guy?
Yeah, well, yeah, I know, because we lived through it at Tamaulipas, so I know it's a difficulty. And I'm sorry that Mike Morris isn't here, because I know that there is a certain point that it will be renovated so that the playground will still be accessible, and that there will, still be an area
There's
to
other
make
space
sure
around the building
that
as
the
well.
kids can get outside, and, the principal knows, that it's happening, and is, it's going to create a little bit of difficulty. But in the end, to get them back out there on a safer field is really the ultimate goal.
Oh, I agree. I just want to make
It's actually
Sure.
going to be from like where the basketball courts are
Yeah.
down. So
Okay.
from the basketball courts up to the playground is still
Yes.
going to be available for them. So they
Great.
still have some area.
So it'll probably have to be somewhat of a rotation, but the nice thing about Jefferson is there are,
Yes.
several different
There are a number
spots.
there.
At Tamaulipas, they were kind of right there on that top laptop area, so.
So we'll vote on that in finance section. Any other comments or questions on that? All right, Jane,
Okay.
What about this one?
you do have a,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I had covered it up with all my notes about Jefferson. So I'm making a motion to ask for the board's approval of a correction under facilities of the high school gym exhaust fan installation. This is good news, from $27,000 to $0.
Right.
Second that.
And hallelujah.
so this, just so I'm clear, so this was one that we had previously approved to come out of the capital account, and we did the work under our existing maintenance budget, and therefore we have the capital dollars that we could expend elsewhere.
Correct.
Comments, questions? All right, roll call.
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitchell Slater?
Yes.
Having, Rich, excuse me, not having the comfort with some of the language that we use, I noticed you said capital account. This says maintenance reserve account. Maybe we could finally get a definition of the different accounts so that those of us who aren't on finance or aren't on facilities will know what we're talking about when we
Yeah.
say capital reserve, financial, operating budget,
No,
maintenance
it's a
account.
good idea. Dana, can you actually do that in the
Sure.
context of our next meeting
Thanks.
with the field and the roofs, because...
And any
what are the roofs?
limitations
Because
on
it's- yeah.
increases and what goes in and what comes out and how the money could be used or under what circumstances could not be used.
That would be helpful.
That would be very helpful.
Right, and what is printed here in the maintenance reserve is correct.
Right. Right. Thank you.
Long-range planning,
No report.
policies.
I would like to ask
I would like to move the approval for final reading of the following policies: 1523 Comprehensive Equity Plan, 1570 Internal Controls, 2415.03 Highly Qualified Teachers, 5860 Safety Patrol, 8420 Emergency and Crisis Situations, 8461 Reporting Violence and Vandalism, Harassment, Intimidation, Bullying, Alcohol, and Other Drug Abuse. And I would like to note that the internal controls policy in our packet had just a typo in it, so the typo has been changed, and I think a clean copy was left at our tables. I can tell you what the typo is.
I actually have one.
In the regs.
I don't know. I have 3 copies.
In the regs, page 1, A, 2, A, and B. The last sentence is read completed by different employees in all the districts, but we're only handling ourselves, one district, so completed by different employees in all districts. So that was just a typo.
Second.
Any questions?
Rich Matasik?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitchell Slater?
Yes.
I'd like to ask the board to approve for first reading the following policies: 2200 curriculum content, 2230 course guides, and 3240 professional development. These policies were tabled last meeting, so SIP could take a look at them, and we talked a bit about them, and so now I am putting them forward for first reading.
I'll second that.
Were there any changes that came out of SIP from what we had discussed in policies?
There were some word changes.
Not
materials.
What are the kinds
There were
of-
wording changes. Well, it wasn't content specific. It didn't change the content, it just changed
You knew she meant.
editing.
You know, she's vice president, so she has
To Roseanne,
Be
please.
more articulate.
All right, that one needs to go in, Roseanne. Didn't make it in the cut.
Ah, okay, got it.
The other ones apparently did. Thank you.
So please note, we will change on course guides regulation, page 1 of 2. It says B2. Oh, gosh, B2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th line down, the end of the line, the word is consider cross-content standards, and we will change it to incorporate cross-content standards. Is that okay? Great. So I guess we can vote.
Rich Matasik?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
Anything else?
We are meeting next Tuesday on the 9th, and you should have gotten your packets today.
Curriculum, instruction, and programs. Ann?
I would ask the board to approve the overnight field trip for Westfield High School Project 79 upperclassmen to Princeton, Blairstown Center, New Jersey. This is a trip that they take every year. It is a bonding and teamwork trip, and it will take place October 24th through October 26th. So it's coming up.
I'd like to second that. But as a point of order, I'd like you to understand that when we put a motion on the table, we need a second before we discuss it, even with descriptive.
Thank you, Ginny.
You're welcome, Ann. And did you find out about the costs? Whether there were any additional costs to the district?
Not to the district, the students are paying a fee. There's no cost to the district.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a second?
I already seconded.
Okay, so Ginny has second.
Any other comments or questions?
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
All right, finance. I'd ask the board to consider.
Yes.
No, they don't have it on here, sorry.
Yeah.
I'd ask the board to consider finance.
You take me off the roll. It's the Rodney King.
1 through 10, and in addition, 11 and 12, which were on the table. I'd like to second.
Second.
Before this discussion.
And I'm sorry, who moved it?
I did.
Ginny second.
Mrs. Light seconded.
Mrs. Light.
Who's on first?
I'd like to call the board its attention to 3 of the motions. Number 10 is the acceptance of a financial gift from an anonymous donor to Franklin Elementary School for the purchase of books, supplies, and classroom materials. We thank you very much for that. Finance motion number 11, as explained by Dana, relates to submitting for voter approval at a special school district election to be held on December 11th between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. A bond proposal, the details of which we will discuss and determine, if not at our next public board meeting, certainly no later than November 13th. And we are putting that in now because the deadline for submission of just a notification to the county is next week. So we don't have a choice in that regard if we want to preserve flexibility to move forward. And resolution number 12 relates to the Jefferson Field that Jane described, and a project cost not to exceed $35,000 from the board's share of that. And just so I'm clear, any board-produced funds would be matched by the town in dollar amount, right?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments or questions? All right.
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kursted?
Yes.
Ginny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Olig?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
I'd ask the board to note the notes for the record. Legislation. Yeah.
I think we should have a meeting, so I will be sending out a note to try and get together as soon as possible.
Okay. Any unfinished business? Any new business? Any ad hoc committee reports?
Nothing tonight.
Anyone? No. Any liaison reports? Ginny?
Gretchen and I attended, yes, the parent-teacher general membership meeting on September 20th. The considerable time was spent talking about the bond vote. There were several questions raised, and Dr. Dolan gave some answers. The New Jersey ESC scores, parents were very interested in getting information about them, and I understand they should be available. We had overall school information, but not student scores.
Right, but since that meeting, actually, we have received the information, and I believe it was sent out, at least at the elementary level, last week, is my
No,
knowledge.
school came home today.
Right.
So there will be information for the board shortly, I'm guessing.
Yes, I would imagine we'll have a testing presentation as part of the next meeting.
Okay. And then I forwarded some questions to you about the new food regulations. There were specific questions about the fact that the size of the protein portion of a meal for intermediate students had been reduced significantly. And there was a question about a food recycling bin for fruit that might not be used, although bundled with a meal. And could there be a milk substitute for children with allergies.
So it was interesting because the questions were raised, as you said, at that meeting, and we spoke about that a bit. I spoke with Mrs. Sullivan, and I'm going to ask her to respond to it in a minute, but was also interesting, if you've been reading the newspaper, et cetera, this has become an issue across the state because of new guidelines which we're required to follow. So I don't know if you want to speak to that
Right.
moment.
There's new federal regulations, which we had to implement this year, which limits the amount of protein that a kid can be served in I think it's a weekly period. So that's why the sandwiches are smaller. There's also restrictions. In order for the pizza to be a reimbursable meal to us, they have to have a fruit with it, which is why they're being not forced, but that's encouraged to take a fruit with it. It's also less expensive for them to buy it that way because then it's considered a reimbursable meal versus an a la carte piece of pizza. As far as recycling the fruit, it's not recommended because once a kid touches it and has it on their plate, you could have some kind of a bin and let kids take it, but it kind of sets you up for some liability issues because somebody else has taken the food and had it on their plate. There is information, as I understand it, posted on the website, but I'm going to have the food service director send something out to the parents as well, so they understand why we implemented these changes.
Yeah, there has been a lot of media attention in this. I've seen actually a number of reports on TV and the paper lately.
And is there, could you also ask the food service groups to address a milk substitute?
Yes, I can, and the issue with that is they can't substitute bottled water. They're not, we had heard they were forcing kids that had milk allergies to drink milk or to take milk. They're certainly not doing that, but they're not allowed to substitute it for bottled water. But yes.
Okay, thank you.
And why is the high school not included in the federal mandate? I think when the food service person was talking to the parents at Roosevelt, she had mentioned that it was the middle schools and the elementary schools. If you got a school lunch from the elementary schools, were included in the federal regulations, but the high school is not.
That's correct, because
is there a reason?
because the high school is not part of the National School Lunch Program. The other schools are. I suspect that's because of the lack of numbers of kids that qualify for free and reduced lunch. Right. That's usually the criteria. I don't know specifically why the high school, because that
makes
has
sense.
been in case, but
we have the same amount of students going up from middle school to high school. So
high school kids, you typically get less of the applications back, so it's not uncommon to have less percentage at the high school than at the elementary and middle school.
So we have to be in that program for the middle school because of the number of students that get free and reduced lunch?
You don't have to be, but you would have to supply them with lunch if they qualify, and that would cost you money. By participating in the program, you get reimbursement from the state.
Right, I'm just,
Roseanne's
I
offering
think I'd
to
like
make
to know how
sandwiches,
much
I
that is. How much do we actually get from the state for those lunches?
I couldn't tell you that number tonight, but
Right,
I can get it for you.
Yeah.
But
I guess one of the things is in the future, if there is a change in food management or food delivery or options, perhaps it would be wise to send information out to the parents in advance so that they know to expect some kind of reaction from their children. They can prepare them. It did cause I guess, a lot of behind-the-scenes talk with uncertainty. And
Could we give the fruit to the food bank?
well, that was the question. The question was, certainly if it's not taken, I guess, if it's left behind.
Right. Well, I could see the reason why you wouldn't want a kid giving it to another kid. You're not going to wash it and whatever, but
Right.
if you give it to the food bank, at least they can.
I think that the people that were at the PTC meeting were indicating they were going to go back to their PTOs and get the students involved in organizing some sort of
Right.
effort like
That's
that.
good.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Or maybe they could start to eat the fruit.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
Not even an option.
Just a thought. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's not.
Imagine.
Roseanne will make pie with it. She's pie.
An afternoon snack.
All right. Was that it, Jane?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Congratulations.
I have, I was going to speak about a Wilson PTO meeting that I attended, but just one further comment from the PTC meeting was an issue that came up, which I'm sure in the history of Board of Educations has come up repeatedly, was communication from the board. And although it was in the context of the bond, it became a much more general topic. I'm neither advocating or putting this idea down. One of the ideas was that there's some sort of communication to the public directly from the board, rather than it being the synopsis or something like that, whether it be the board president, that there's some regular communication from the board. I'm just putting that out there. However that would manifest, maybe we could talk about it further, whether it's an idea worth pursuing, but just because it came up.
Communication on,
Anything. Whatever,
again?
anything, whatever's happening. Issues, current issues.
we got the camera rolling. We welcome people to the meeting.
I think
Send
there's a
out
difference
synopsis.
between expecting people to go to the website and click and watch the video. I mean, really, which can require some amount of time, and maybe emailing something out. That was the perception that
But
was
isn't it
presented to us.
the same communication as the synopsis? I mean, Dr. Dolan's at the board table, so.
Well, maybe then the way, I think the perception is the synopsis is from, and again, I'm not advocating the position. I'm just
And
saying
I think it's
that
that misinterpretation of who's
that's
who and
from
who does
Dr.
what.
Dolan and the administration versus what's from the board. I think that's the view. So it's something that maybe we could talk about more.
I guess why don't we change the name of the synopsis from the superintendent to the superintendent and the board president?
Or perhaps revisit the Facebook page.
It's something
just
that was
saying.
raised
Yeah,
as well
right.
at the meeting. So anyway, just it's still something for us to consider. What I was going to report on.
Mitch is the administrator. With Mitch as the administrator.
Fine, you make the pie, I'll do the sandwiches.
On September 27th, I attended the Wilson PTO general meeting, which was packed. It was a fantastic turnout, and I think primarily because Tim Harrison came and made a report on the new language arts curriculum K through 5. It generated a lot of questions, and I think that some of the other elementary school PTOs are now pursuing him to come in and make the same presentation. And one of the things that came up was that the district, that we had given elementary school teachers funds this year to build up their classroom libraries, and that while it was a huge boost, that there's still a big need in that area. And so there was a lot of talk at that PTO meeting about how to generate funds to continue to grow, not because you need books at every level, but at every level and every genre that's now part of our curriculum. So it was a really healthy discussion, and I think it's great that Tim's willing to go out on these 7 p.m., 8 p.m. nights. It was the same night as the high school back to school night, so he was a little, he was like playing two very distinct roles, but it was very worthwhile, I think, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, with that, we'll recognize the public for questions and/or comments. Seeing no one come to the podium? We do have a private session tonight? No, we don't have a private session tonight.
Yeah, we do. Oh, you don't want to hear contract? You want negotiations?
I'm sorry. Okay.
Sure.
We do have a private one.
I'd ask the board to approve the following resolutions. Resolve that the Board of Education move into private session for the purposes of discussing personnel, litigation, or negotiations. And may further resolve that any discussions held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Can I have a second?
Yes, second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Meeting adjourned.